Hello there and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing something really cool. We're going to be learning how to create a WooCommerce single product page with custom thumbnail carousel using an ACF gallery with the bricks nestable slider. So what you're seeing here is not the default WooCommerce slider. What we're going to be doing is we're going to use the ACF gallery to replace the default WooCommerce gallery. So in this video, you're going to learn three major things. First, you're going to learn how to set up the ACF gallery as a custom product gallery in your single product page. And then you're going to learn how to hook it up to a thumbnail carousel. Now you're going to also learn how to set up the thumbnail carousel. So you're basically going to create two carousels and sync them, and then you're going to learn how to use a custom options for the bricks nestable slider. Now if you take a look at this, you can see that the carousel at the bottom acts as a navigation to the carousel at the top. So if I click any of this carousel, it responds to the carousel at the top. And we also have our navigation, the arrows and the paginations. Everything is highly customizable. You are not tied to anything. You can place these arrows anywhere you want, and you can decide to take it off completely. You can decide to take off the pagination. So everything is highly customizable. Now let's go to the back end. First of all, we want to see how to set up the ACF gallery. That's the very first thing. So now I have advanced custom field installed here. This is the latest version. So you can see that the interface looks clean and all nice. I've already gone ahead to create my product gallery, but I'm just going to show you how I created it. So I'm just going to click add new, and then I'm going to give it a name, product gallery 2, and then the field type is going to be gallery, and I'm going to call this product gallery 2, and just click there, and then it's going to name that. So this name is very important, so take note of the name you're going to have here, and every other thing remains the same, nothing much. You don't really have to do anything here. So once you've created that, you want to make sure that your post type is equal to product, so that it's going to show only on the product pages. And once you're done, click save. Now I'm not going to click save because I already have done mine. So I'm going to go back to the field group, and then I'm going to show you my own that I created. That's just about it. And now I want to point that I haven't tested this on MetaBox or Jet Engine. This could work. The most important thing is the field name. So my field name is product gallery. You can see that that is taken from here. So this field name is what you really need. So if you're using MetaBox or Jet Engine, you have to pay attention to your field name. So whichever one you use, you could follow along and let me know if it works with MetaBox or Jet Engine. Now let's go over to the WooCommerce product. I have my product image, but I'm really not going to use it. As you can see that I don't have a product gallery, the default product gallery, but I'm using the ACF product gallery. Once you create that field and you come here, you're going to see this field, product gallery, that you created earlier on here. It's going to show up in the products, and then you go to add to gallery, and then you select the images that you want. I have already selected my images, and I'm just going to reload. So I have 4 images because I want to use 4 images. Now we're going to be using the bricks query loop inside the nestable slider to pull in this gallery, but by default, the custom post type gallery is not supported. So we're going to be using a snippet that is going to add that support. So I want to thank Gerson Rubbles for making this snippet available. This snippet he got from the bricks support when he also wanted to do something similar. And then he provided this snippet in the Design with Cracker Facebook group. So we're going to be using the same snippet. Now to use this snippet, there are 2 ways you can go about it. The first way is you could put it in your functions.php of the child theme. The second way is to use the free code snippet plugin, and you can also use it with your code organizer. You can use script organizer or WP codebox. Personally, I use script organizer, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to be using a free tool code snippet. I already have that snippet here. I'm just going to turn it off and create a new snippet. So that new snippet, I'm going to call it ACF gallery support. I have the snippet. I'm going to paste it here. And then I'm going to link that in the description. Now there are 2 things you're going to change in this snippet. One is going to be the product gallery, that is the field name. Now let's go back here. So this was product gallery, and then we have here product gallery. The ACF underscore is a prefix that will be there, for ACF gallery. MetaBox may have something different, or Jet Engine might have a different prefix. So all I need to do is to come here and get my field name, which is that, and then I'm going to go there and paste it there. And then the next thing you're going to do is to change these ID. Now, when it's time to change this ID, I'm going to show you exactly how to change this ID, because you're going to change this ID with the ID of your loop item. So when it's time, we're going to come here and change it. So I'm going to just go ahead and save this and activate it. Now, it's not going to work until we change the ID, but we're just going to leave it activated. The next thing we're going to do is to create a single product template. I'm going to go to Bricks, Template, and then I'm going to create a single product template. To do that, add a new template, and then I'm just going to call it single product template. And then the template type is going to be WooCommerce single product, and click update or publish. The next thing, edit with Bricks. Now let's take a look at how the product page looks like by default. This is the product page. This is a single product page. Is the default product page for this product called iPhone 13. You can see it's just a default WooCommerce product page. So we're going to be recreating this. So we have two columns here, and then we have the main carousel up and then the thumbnail carousel down. So let's go in and start creating. I'm going to insert a section. A section typically comes with a container, and inside that container I'm going to add two blocks. The first one, I'm just going to duplicate that, and I want them to stack horizontally. The first block is going to contain a carousel. I'm going to give it a flex basis of 60%, and the second is going to contain a product details. I'm going to give it a flex basis of 40%, and then we have those, and I want to separate them by a column gap of 10 pixels. Then inside here, I'm going to add the product title. I'm going to also add the product price, and then I'm going to add the add to cart button. I'm going to go back to the style layout, and then I'm going to give it a padding of 24 pixels all around. And then I'm going to select these, the product price. I'm going to give it a margin top of 20 pixel. I'm going to select the add to cart and give it a margin top of 20 pixel. Let's make that 40 pixel. And then I'm going to go back to the container. I need these blocks to stretch, so I want them to be the same height, so I'm going to set it to stretch. Now onto the next block, I'm going to add a carousel. So I'm going to click there and add the nestable slider. So we have the nestable slider here. Now because we're going to be using a loop, we need only one slider. I'm going to delete the last two sliders, and I'm going to select this slider, and we're going to start configuring this slider. So I'm going to name this, I want to rename it to main slider, and then I'm going to select this and turn on the query loop. For the query, I'm going to use post, and then for the post type, I'm going to set it to media, and then I'm going to just delete these two elements because I want an image inside there. So I'm going to drop an image there, and then for that image, I'm going to give it a dynamic data value of post ID. And if we're doing something right, we should begin to see some images populate. As you can see, the images are being pulled in. I'm going to select the slide, and then I'm going to go here and give it a padding top and bottom of 20 pixels. I'm going to select the image, and then I'm going to set the height to 100%, and then I'm going to set the width to auto. And then for that main slider, I want the color, the background color, to be white. So I'm just going to give it a background color of white. Let's go into the slider settings. So we're going to the options. I want my slider direction to be vertical, and then I'm going to click save and preview what we have so far on the front end. So let's refresh. Take note, I'm previewing the product, the actual product, so you can see that we have our carousel, but then you can also see that it pulls in all the images in the media library. So the images that we did not include in the gallery are also showing up here. Now to solve that, we're going to select that slide, and then we're going to check here for the ID, so you can see that there is an ID. So what we need is this EQKH, those set of strings. That might be a bit difficult to remember, but to get it, I'm going to go to the front end and select that slide, and then we will get that from here. So we're just going to copy that, and I'm going to the back end, and then in that snippet, I'm going to replace these with that ID, and then we're going to save it. Now, if we come back to refresh this, you're going to see that these dots, we have about 10 of them now because it's pulling in all the available images from the media library. Let's refresh that. We should have just about 4. So you can see that it pulls in only the images that we selected for the gallery. Next, we're going to duplicate this slider, and so we can have two slider. The next one is going to be our thumbnail slider. And then let's go to the settings. I don't want that to be vertical, and I want items to show to be 4 because we have 4 images. For the height, we want to set it to auto height, and then we're gonna just write auto as the value of the height. And then inside where I have the image, now it appears that nothing is showing. Let's just refresh the builder to see if it is going to populate. Sometimes these things don't show up properly inside the builder, but it's coming up now. So we have 4 images. Now let's go ahead and edit that. For our thumbnail carousel, we're not going to have the paginations, so I'm going to turn that off. But we would like to see the arrows, so I'm going to click to show arrow. For the arrow, I'm going to start by giving it a background of black, and then I want to give it a border radius of 50 pixels, so it's going to be round. And then for that background, I want it to be just a bit transparent. And then for our previous the previous arrow, we're going to choose something that looks slick, like a themify icon. And then I'm going to go to the next arrow and choose a themify icon for the next arrow. And then we now have the option of typography. I really didn't know why it doesn't show up at first, but then I'm going to set it a font size of 2 rem, and then I'm going to give it a color of white. That looks good. Now we want to move the arrow above the thumbnails carousel because we need that arrow to come here, as you can see. So what I'm going to do is, for the top value, I'm going to give it a negative 20%, and then I'm going to copy that and paste it for the other arrow. And then for the left value, I want to move it just away from the edge, so I'm going to give it 5% on the left value. So for the right, I'm going to go to the right value and give it 5%. Let's go back to the options, and then I want to have this space as 10. So I'm going to save this, and let's take a look at the front end. Now take note that because we duplicated it, this slider has the same query as the main slider. That is what we want. I'm going to refresh this. Let's see what happens. So you can see that we have these arrows. The arrows are for the thumbnails, but you can also see that the thumbnails picks up all the gallery pictures. So we want to restrict it to only the 4 images, just like we did for the main slider. So we're going to go back to the snippet, and we're going to copy that if statement, and then we're going to paste it. Now we want to replace this with the ID of this other loop item. Remember, the first one was the ID of the main slider, the loop item in the main slider. Now we want to replace it with this. You can see the ID is here, but it's kind of difficult to see. So just like we did before, I'm going to go and inspect it and then check for that ID. And then I'm going to copy that ID. Even though it's on the class, it is the same as the ID. And then I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to go to the front end and refresh, and let's see if we're going to have just our 4 images instead of all the other images. So we have our 4 images. The next thing that is left to do is to link this thumbnail carousel to the main carousel. So we want to use this as a navigation for this. So let's go back. To do that, I'm going to add a code block. So let me just add a code block. Now you can use your code organizer to do this. You don't have to use a code block inside the builder. So I'm going to copy a code, and then I'm going to paste that code here. Now this code is going to be in the description. Now make sure that you turn on execute code. You're going to be using a code block inside the builder. So go to break settings, and then you go to the builder access, and then you make sure that the code execution, it is not disabled, and make sure it is turned on for the administrator or any relevant user. So let's go back. I'm going to turn this on. Remember to also turn on the code execution inside the builder. We're also going to replace the IDs, but in this case, we're going to replace the IDs for our slider. So for the main slider, I'm going to give it an ID. And then for this other one, I'm going to give it an ID, even though it's not really necessary, but it's kind of important because we will use those IDs for some CSS stylings. Now, this is the ID what we're going to be using in the code block, and this one is the ID we're going to be using. As you can see, it's kind of difficult to, to see, but I'm just going to give this another ID of main slider, and let's save that. So I have that as my main slider, and for this one, I'm going to call it thumbnail slider. Now, to get the main ID that we're going to use to replace this, we're not going to be using the ID that we just gave it. We're going to go here, and then we're going to copy this bricks data.split instances, and then I'm going to go to the front end, hit F12 and go to the console. Then we're going to paste that there and click enter. So you can see that we have these two strings, and this represents the ID for both sliders. So I'm going to expand this, and you can see that if I point here, you can see which one it belongs to. So for these, you can see, so this one belongs to this one. I'm just going to copy the one that belongs to the thumbnail, and then I'm going to go back. So for the thumbnail, where you have thumbnail, we're going to replace that ID, and then let's go back, and then we're going to copy the one that is for the main carousel. So when you point there, you can see that it highlights the main carousel. So let's copy that, and then we're going to go in there where you have the main and replace the ID. Just make sure there is no space and save it. Now you may wonder, why did I give it an ID? Why did I change this to main slider? And now the reason I changed that to main slider, which does not in any way affect this original ID. I'm not sure how this works, but this is just how it is. If you change the ID, the original ID is still preserved in some way. So that's just how it is. So now the reason I'm giving this these two sliders the ID of main slider and thumbnail slider is because we want to use it in the custom CSS to target maybe things like the pagination and also the active slider. So for the thumbnail slider, I want the active slider to scale, just like we had here in our original design. As you can see, the active slider scales. So that is why I gave it that ID. So it's going to be easy to remember because it is readable. It's much easier than having those set of XY, strings. So for here, you can see that you really don't need to do anything except just change those two original IDs. So I'm just going to save it. And then we're going to take a look at the front end and see how it behaves. So far, you can see that the carousels are syncing, but it doesn't look quite okay. It is a bit janky. So first of all, we don't have any transition effect, but the carousel is working. Secondly, if I click on the carousel, nothing happens, unlike the original that we can click and then it selects the other slider. So inside the builder, I'm going to take care of the transition for the thumbnail carousel. I'm going to go to the slide inside the thumbnail carousel, and we're going to search for transition, and then we're going to change the CSS transition to 0.4 seconds. And I'm going to save it. Let's go back to the front end and check it out. Remember that I'm previewing the actual product. I'm not previewing the template. If you preview the template, you're not going to have these 4 images. You're going to have multiple images from the media library. Now you see we have the transition and it looks okay, but now we need the active slider to be at the center, and there's no way we can set that with the default slider options. Now the default option doesn't give us the option to set that slider to stay at the center when it is active. So we're going to switch to the custom options. But before we do that, the custom option uses JSON. You see, it says you have to provide your own options in JSON format. You may not know what JSON is. There's really nothing here to tell you what JSON is. And even when you click learn more, there's really no information about it. But I'm going to show you how to format the JSON data. So we're going to go back to the front end. I'm going to hit F12, and then we're going to inspect the slider. So what I want to do is to select the slider where you have that thumbnail slider, and then you're going to right click on where you have that attribute, and then you choose edit attribute. It is always good to also finish your settings in the normal default options. Your breakpoint settings, for instance, in my smallest breakpoint, for instance, I would want my items to show in the thumbnail slider to be 2, and that is going to help you get the settings in the JSON from the attribute. Now we're going to see that media query is going to be included in the JSON. So I'm gonna just right click where you have the attributes, and then we're gonna copy it. Next, we're gonna go to an online JSON formatter. So I'm just gonna write JSON formatter, and then that is it, and JSON formatter and validator. So we're just gonna paste that attribute in and process it, and that is gonna give us this JSON in a formatted format. So I'm just gonna copy it, and then let's go back to the main breakpoint, and then instead of using the default options, we're going to switch to the custom option, and then we're going to paste that JSON, and we have exactly the same settings. But the good thing is it gives you an idea of how to format this JSON. And be sure to put in the commas and just pay attention to the formatting of the JSON. So taking the JSON from the attribute already gives you an idea on how to format the JSON. So for instance, we have a breakpoint here, and you can easily duplicate it and add more breakpoints and more settings to the breakpoints. So I'm just going to save this and go to the front end and check if we have the same result. So we're going to refresh the front end, and as you can see, we still have the same result that we had before, but we are now in the custom option. So it's easy for us to add our own parameters. To know the kind of parameters that you want to add, you can go to split.js. This is the library that the nestable slider is using, so you can check it. And then, for instance, we have the focus center, and if you go into the code, you can see something called focus center. So I'm just going to copy that, and then we're going to come back here and paste it. But we will have to format it in the JSON format, and you see that it has to have a double quote around the words. So let's go ahead and format it, and make sure you remove that single quote, and then add a double quote. So make sure that you follow the same rules, the same syntax. Now we have that focus center. Let's save it and check the front end and see how it behaves. So let's refresh this. Now you can see that the thumbnail slider is centered. It has a bit of a weird animation. It kicks in a little bit. So we just want to check. So we want to add one more property, and that property is going to be called is navigation true. So we are telling it that this particular slider is going to be used as a navigation for the other slider. So it's just going to optimize it for use as a navigation for the main slider. So let's save and take a look at the front end. And you can see that everything looks smoother. And then if you click the thumbnails, it selects the slider in the main slider. So everything works the way it's supposed to work. And just to clean up the design, I'm going to go into the section, and then I'm going to give it a background color. And then I'm going to give my main slider a background color of white. I'm going to give the overall container the background color of white. So let's save that. So let's preview the front end and see what it looks like. So you can see that the slider looks nice, and this is just a bit too close to the edge. So we're going to go back in and select the slide, and then under layered, we're going to give it a top and bottom margin of 20 pixels. So let's push it away from the edges. Let's save that and check it again. And one more thing, I think it wasn't a good idea to give that container a background color. So I'm going to take it off because we need to see the gap, but rather I'm going to go to the block and give it a background color of white. So this is just tidying up the design. Everything is working perfectly. So let's refresh that and see. And let's not forget the responsive options. To just make sure that everything looks okay on responsive mode. So from these breakpoints, I think from there, I'd like to start stacking it vertically. So I'm just going to select that and change the flex basis to 100%. And then I'm going to change that to 100% too. So for this, we're going to need a row gap. And it looks okay. It's all a matter of choice on how you want your layout to be. So you could just design your layout regularly the way you would normally design it. And you can see that the slider now has 2 slides at the smaller breakpoint like we said in the options. So let's save it and check it out in the front end. So let's go ahead and refresh that and then hit F12 and check the responsive mode, and you can see that it looks okay and everything works. The arrangement is up to you. Anyhow you want to arrange your layout, feel free to move the sliders anyway. So that's it, guys. Let me know if you found this useful. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think of this. I'd also like you to give it a try using MetaBox and Jet Engine. Let's see if this works. So let me know in the comment section if it works with MetaBox and Jet Engine. And then don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and then turn on the notification so you don't miss other great videos just like this. And I'd also like to invite you to join our Design with Cracker Facebook group. There's gonna be a lot of stuff going on there in the coming days. There are a couple of stuff that we probably can do with YouTube's small tips here and there. I'm gonna be dropping it there in the Design with Cracker Facebook group. So hop in and join the group and let's learn together. Until next time, have a great day.